Mount Shasta rises 14,179 feet above Northern California, and it rises almost completely alone. There are no foothills to speak of, no neighboring ranges to blunt its outline. From the valley floor, it erupts nearly 10,000 vertical feet in front of you. It has 7 glaciers. It is classified by the United States Geological Survey as a very high-threat volcano. The town at its base has 3,300 residents, more than 100 spiritual sects, and 29 New Age businesses. A mining engineer once hiked its slopes and came back with a religion that attracted 1 million followers. A geologist organized an expedition of 80 people to explore what he said he had found beneath it and vanished the morning they were supposed to leave. These are 10 reasons why people keep vanishing on Mount Shasta. One of those entries involves a man who had reached the same stretch of trail dozens of times before, who knew the mountain, who packed wine and fried chicken for what he expected to be a pleasant afternoon, and was never seen again. Stay for number 1. This channel covers the geography that doesn't make the front page. If that's the kind of thing you're into, subscribe. Today we are counting down 10 reasons why people keep vanishing on Mount Shasta. There is a town at the base of the mountain, population 3,300. It was originally called Sisson, named after a local innkeeper, and was incorporated in 1905. In 1924, the residents voted to rename it Mount Shasta City, presumably for commercial reasons. That rebranding worked better than anyone intended. Today, the main boulevard has a hardware store, a gas station, and Andes transmission. It also has a Buddhist monastery, crystal shops, Vision Quest operators, and a reading room run by an ascended master religious movement that once drew 1 million followers. The reading room publishes all its materials in purple or violet ink. Black ink is considered dangerous. Roughly 25,000 to 26,000 tourists visit Mount Shasta City each year. Local tour companies estimate at least half of them are there for spiritual reasons. The town itself is built on Lahar deposit, the compacted debris of volcanic mudflows from previous eruptions of the mountain it is named after. The crystals they sell in the shops, the ones programmed with messages from a civilization supposedly buried under the volcano, come from a mine in Brazil. The mountain has been drawing people with ideas about hidden civilizations since at least the 1880s, and most of that can be traced to a single teenager. Frederick Spencer Oliver was born in 1866 and grew up in Siskiyou County, in sight of the mountain. Around 1883, when he was approximately 17, he began transcribing what he described as mental dictations from a disembodied intelligence, calling itself Philos the Tibetan. He wrote for 3 years. The resulting manuscript described ancient Atlantean technology, anti-gravity aircraft, wireless communication, and a community of enlightened beings living in tunnels beneath Mount Shasta. He finished in 1886. He copyrighted it in 1894. He died in 1899 at the age of 33. His mother published the book in 1905 under the title A Dweller on Two Planets. It is still in print. One literary scholar's assessment, quoted in Wikipedia, was that the book was not very good fiction, but it did establish all the main elements of the modern Mount Shasta mythos. That is an accurate summary. The book mentions Lemuria only 6 times and focuses primarily on Atlantis. It barely matters. It gave later writers a framework, and they built an entire civilization on top of it. Oliver signed the book as its transcriber, not its author. His disclaimer is still on the copyright page of every edition. More than 120 years later, that detail lands differently than he probably intended. The mountain generates its own weather. It sits so far above its surroundings, nearly 10,000 vertical feet of isolated rise, that incoming air masses have no choice but to climb it. When they do, they cool, and they condense, and they form something specific: smooth, hovering, disc-shaped clouds called lenticular formations. These clouds look like spacecraft, not vaguely like spacecraft, exactly like the illustrations in 1950s science fiction magazines. They hover in place for hours. They are silent. They glow in certain light conditions. And because Mount Shasta produces them continuously, people have been reporting what appear to be UFOs above this mountain since at least the 1950s. Here's what makes this different. Kenneth Arnold's 1947 sighting near Washington's Mount Rainier, The event that coined the term flying saucer and launched the modern era of UFO reporting occurred above another Cascade volcano. The Air Force's official investigation concluded he had probably seen lenticular clouds. The physics is the same at Shasta. The mountain's own avalanche center addresses this in its safety briefings, warning climbers that lenticular formations can shroud the upper mountain on what appears to be a clear day. The bulletin lists 3 names for these formations: cloud caps, lenticulars, and, without apparent irony, spaceships. UFO watching tours operate out of Mount Shasta City. They run year-round. The clouds are reliably there. In fall 2009, U.S. Forest Service officers discovered a hole on the slopes of Mount Shasta. Not a sinkhole. Not a collapsed cave. A hand-dug shaft, approximately 60 feet deep and 15 feet wide, excavated on national forest land without a permit. The diggers had rigged a wire pulley between 2 nearby trees to haul dirt out. They left behind a ladder, some 5-gallon buckets, and 1 plastic water bottle. Then they were gone. A Forest Service law enforcement officer named Carmen Kinch stated publicly that she believed she knew who was responsible. She assumed they were looking for valuable minerals. No charges were ever filed. The Forest Service filled the hole within days, citing safety concerns. The exact location was never publicly disclosed. Digging on national forest land without a permit is a federal crime. First-time offenders face fines up to $20,000 and up to a year in prison. A filmmaker named Elijah Sullivan spent roughly 10 years investigating what happened. His documentary, The Whole Story, screened at the 2025 Slam Dance Film Festival and was covered by KQED and This American Life. Oregon State police officers he consulted said the excavation setup was consistent with illegal artifact looting, nighttime work, dirt removed from site, targeted digging. Looting of Native American archaeological material from land this rich in tribal history is not hypothetical. It happens, but the other theories persist as well. Some people in Mount Shasta believe the diggers were trying to reach Telos, the underground city beneath the mountain. Some believe they were prospecting for gold. Some believe it was something else entirely that nobody has named yet. Sullivan described the hole as a Rorschach test for the town. What you believe is at the bottom of it tells you exactly what kind of person you are in Mount Shasta. He spent a decade investigating and declined to name a conclusion. The site is just a clearing now. 2 trees with faded scratch marks. 7 miles up the mountain from town, at approximately 7,400 feet, there is a high alpine meadow called Panther Meadow. It has a cold spring. It is ringed by red fir forest. In summer, it is quiet in the way that places are quiet when something important is happening there. The Wintu people have been coming to Panther Meadow since before any written record. Their origin story places their people's birth at the spring in this meadow. They have conducted ceremonies here continuously. 9 Native American tribes lived within view of this mountain at the time of European contact in the 1820s. Archaeological evidence indicates human habitation in the surrounding area going back at least 7,000 years. In 1991, the National Park Service designated Panther Meadow and the entire area of Mount Shasta above 8,000 feet as eligible for the National Register of Historic Places because of their significance to Native American culture. In 1994, the keeper of the National Register expanded that determination to cover the entire mountain, all 150,000 acres. In 1998, the U.S. Forest Service revoked a $22 million ski resort development permit near Panther Meadow, citing its impact on Native American traditional use. That is not a common outcome. Meanwhile, New Age visitors, drawn by the I Am movement, the Lemurian legends, the energy vortex claims, have been conducting their own ceremonies at Panther Meadow since the 1930s. Wintu leaders have had to specifically object to visitors leaving crystals in the spring and meditating in the stream. One elder told the Forest Service directly, "We have to get a permit to come here, but you let every Tom, Dick, and Harry put crystals in the water." The spring at Panther Meadow ran dry for the first time in tribal memory in the mid-2000s. During the same decade, a corporate water bottling operation was seeking permits to draw water from the mountain's base springs. The Wintu are still coming. The New Age visitors are still coming. The Forest Service is still mediating between them. Nothing has been resolved. We are 5 entries into this list. If the number that stopped you was 7,000 years, the length of time people have been coming to this mountain before any of these myths were attached to it, drop that in the comments. We would like to know which part of this story is landing hardest, and we'll be right back. In autumn 1930, a mining engineer from Chicago named Guy Ballard took a hike on the south side of Mount Shasta. He had moved to Northern California for government surveying work. He had also been reading extensively about theosophy and the occult, and had heard rumors of something called the Brotherhood of Mount Shasta. He was, by his own account, looking for it. On the trail, he stopped at a mountain spring. He described an electrical current passing through his body. When he turned around, there was a man standing behind him who identified himself as the Count of Saint-Germain and produced a creamy liquid from thin air. Ballard drank it. 4 years later, he published his account under the pen name Godfrey Ray Kane and called it Unveiled Mysteries. The Saint-Germain Foundation was incorporated in 1932. By 1938, the movement had attracted a reported peak of 1 million followers. Classes were held in civic opera houses in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and Miami. Here's the thing. The I Am movement has specific doctrines. All literature must be printed in violet or purple ink, never black, which is considered dangerous. The movement considers Guy Ballard to be the reincarnation of George Washington. Jesus Christ is an ascended master. Death is not real. In 1941, the IRS revoked the movement's tax-exempt status on the grounds that it was not a religion. A court ruling in 1957 restored it. When Edna Ballard, Guy's wife and co-founder, died in Chicago on February 10, 1971, the movement did not announce it until June. Because the movement does not believe in death, the Sacramento Bee eventually ran the story under the headline, I Am Sect Leader Edna Ballard is Dead. Today the movement reports approximately 5,000 members and 300 international sanctuaries. The annual pageant at Mount Shasta has been held every August since 1950. The I Am Reading Room on the main street of Mount Shasta City is open to the public. The books inside are in purple. Beneath the mountain, according to a belief system held by tens of thousands of people worldwide, there is a city. It is called Telos. It has 5 underground levels, it has hydroponic gardens, it has a pyramid temple with a capstone that came from Venus, and an artificial sun. According to the belief, it houses approximately 1.5 million inhabitants. The inhabitants are Lemurians. They stand approximately 7 feet tall. They wear white robes and sandals. They have a walnut-sized protrusion on their foreheads that functions as an extrasensory perception organ. They can become invisible. They can travel between dimensions. According to some accounts, they occasionally emerge and shop in the local area, identified by the distinctive headdress they wear to cover their foreheads. The concept of Lemuria was introduced in 1864 by a British zoologist named Philip Sclater, who used it to describe a hypothetical land bridge between Madagascar and India, a scientific attempt to explain lemur fossil distribution. The hypothesis was disproven by plate tectonics in the 1960s. In the intervening century, it was transformed by theosophists, Rosicrucians, and the I Am movement into something Philip Sclater would not have recognized. By the 1931 publication of Lemuria, the Lost Continent of the Pacific, written under a pseudonym by the head of the American Rosicrucian Order, the story had settled. The continent had sunk into the Pacific. The survivors had taken refuge underground, and their current address was Mount Shasta, California. Multiple active religious movements have incorporated this belief into their founding documents. Pluto's Cave, a 190,000-year-old lava tube on the north side of the mountain, is one of the most popular proposed entrances to Telos. It is open to the public and managed by Klamath National Forest. You can hike into it for approximately 1,200 feet before the dark becomes total. The crystal shops in Mount Shasta City sell Lemurian quartz, encoded, according to the belief, with messages from the city below. The crystals come from a mine in Brazil. Locals who grew up here remember being warned as children that if they wandered away from the car in the nearby town of Dunsmuir, the Lemurians would think they wanted to be sacrificed to the mountain. That is what the legend sounds like when it is lived with rather than studied. Mount Shasta is often described by outfitters and guiding services as a beginner's big mountain. The phrasing is accurate in a narrow sense. It does not require the technical expertise of a Himalayan peak. You can drive to 6,950 feet, park at the Bunny Flat trailhead, and reach the base camp at Lake Helen in 2 to 3 miles. There is no quota system, no reservations, no ranger check-in. A self-issued wilderness permit and summit pass are all you need. What this framing omits, the mountain rises 14,179 feet. It is the second highest peak in the Cascade Range. It has 7 glaciers, including Whitney Glacier, the largest glacier in California. Above 10,000 feet, the terrain is hard ice and loose volcanic scree. The summit plateau is flat and featureless, and in cloud cover, which can arrive without warning on an otherwise clear day, it becomes easy to begin descending the wrong side of the mountain. The mountain's own avalanche center notes this explicitly in its safety briefings. It happens every year and can result in lengthy search and rescue missions. In 2019, there were 16 climbing-related incidents on Mount Shasta, including 1 fatality. The American Alpine Club described that year as the second consecutive year of above-average rescues. In 2024, 2 people died on the same route, Clear Creek, officially the easiest late-season option on the mountain, within 1 month of each other. One was Matias Trevizzano, a 45-year-old Silicon Valley executive who had previously summited Aconcagua, one of the 7 summits. He was an experienced mountaineer. He was on the mountain's easiest route in September, when the snow was largely gone. He descended the wrong ridge, became separated from his partner, and was found 2,000 feet below where he had last been seen. By mid-2026, the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office reported that Mount Shasta had already seen more search and rescue incidents and more fatalities than all of 2024. Here is the pattern. The spiritual reputation of this mountain, the energy vortexes, the Lemurian city, the ascended masters, is not a neutral factor in these statistics. People arrive expecting a place of revelation. Some of them come underprepared because the mountain's reputation is mystical rather than technical. Some of them come well prepared and still make a single navigational error on a flat, featureless plateau in sudden cloud. The mountain generates its own weather. It disoriented the very people who came to be enlightened by it. Most search and rescue operations on Mount Shasta recover someone. Most end with a helicopter, a stretcher, a resolution of some kind, but some do not. Those are the ones this video is actually about. In 1904, a geologist calling himself J.C. Brown was employed by the Lord Cowdray Mining Company of England to prospect for gold in Northern California. Near the base of Mount Shasta, he claimed to have found a rockfall concealing a man-made entrance. He said he cleared the debris and discovered a tunnel descending 11 miles underground. What he described finding at the bottom? Gold artifacts, copper and gold plates, unusual machinery, walls covered in hieroglyphs, 27 giant skeletons, the smallest 6 feet and 6 inches, the tallest over 10 feet. 2 mummified figures in royal robes, which he believed to be a king and queen of an unknown people. He sealed the entrance. He told no one. For 30 years, he studied Lemurian literature. In 1934, he resurfaced and told his story to a journalist at the Stockton Record newspaper. A man named John C. Root organized an expedition. 80 people signed on. On June 19, 1934, they gathered to depart. J.C. Brown did not show up. He was never heard from again. Police investigated. No evidence of foul play was found. No evidence of anything else was found either. A researcher named Nick Sindoni later investigated the historical record. He found no documentation of anyone named J.C. Brown with the Lord Cowdray Mining Company. He did find a geologist named J.B. Body, who had traveled to Mount Shasta with Lord Cowdray himself in 1904, confirmed by U.S. border crossing records at Laredo, Texas. Body returned to the area in 1907 with 3 additional geologists. He crossed into Mexico 13 times between 1905 and 1912. After 1912, his whereabouts are unknown until a man calling himself J.C. Brown walked into a Stockton newspaper office in 1934 and walked back out of history. The tunnel has never been found. The skeletons have never been produced. The rockfall entrance has never been located. What Sindoni's research confirms is this. Someone with genuine geological credentials from the right mining company was in exactly the right place in 1904 for this story to have had a factual seed. What grew from that seed, whether it was a discovery, a fabrication, a gradual elaboration, or something that cannot be categorized, is unknown. The expedition waited all morning, 80 people. No ransom was demanded. No body was identified. No note was left. No one who knew him came forward with an explanation. He had spent 30 years building toward a revelation. He gathered the audience. He set the date. He chose, or was compelled by something, not to appear. Whatever he found in 1904, if he found anything, he kept the secret perfectly. He is the one vanishing in this story that cannot be explained even by the mountain. Lake Helen sits at 10,400 feet on the south side of Mount Shasta. In May, it is still frozen. The snow above it is hard-packed and steep, and the red banks, a band of red volcanic pumice at 12,400 feet, are visible as a dark stripe across the upper mountain. The trail from the Bunny Flat trailhead takes 2 to 3 miles to reach this point. It is well marked. It is walked by thousands of climbers every season. This is where Karl Herbert Landers was last seen. Landers was 69 years old, from Orinda, California. He was an experienced outdoorsman. He had attempted Mount Shasta before. On May 21, 1999, he arrived at the mountain with 2 friends, Barry Gilmore and Milton Gaines. They set out early. The trio had left their motel at 4 a.m. At some point in the morning, Landers told his companions he was feeling unwell. He said he would walk ahead and let them catch up. He went around a bend in the trail. When Gilmore and Gaines came around that same bend, he was not there. Search and rescue operations were extensive. Professional teams, led by a veteran coordinator with more than 20 years of SAR experience, covered the terrain. No footprints leading off trail, no equipment, no indication of a fall, no indication of any distress, no Karl Herbert Landers. 25 years have passed. His case remains open with the California Department of Justice Missing Persons Unit. Not a single clue has surfaced. What makes the Landers' disappearance particularly difficult to process is the conditions. It was not a whiteout. The trail is not technical at that elevation in those months. He was not alone in a remote wilderness. He had companions who were seconds behind him. He walked around a bend in a popular, well-maintained trail above a busy base camp in reasonable weather and ceased to exist. There is a second case that does not make this easier. On July 17, 1965, a man named John Nezza set out from the Sierra Club cabin at Horse Camp on Mount Shasta. He was 80 years old. He had summited this mountain more than 40 times. He knew it as well as anyone. He left most of his gear at the cabin, expecting a routine climb. According to one account, he brought wine, whiskey, and fried chicken. The supplies of a man planning a pleasant afternoon. He was last seen at Lake Helen. Buzzards were reportedly seen circling the Red Banks area above the lake. Search teams went up. They found nothing. No remains, no equipment, no fried chicken. 2 men, 34 years apart. Last seen in the same area. The same absence of evidence. The same open question. The trail above Lake Helen is walked by thousands of people every summer. The mountain is not hiding. It is right there, visible from 100 miles away on a clear day. And somewhere in the ordinary geography of a well-traveled path, 2 experienced people walked around a bend. Nobody came back. Mount Shasta has been drawing people in for at least 7,000 years, and it has not stopped. If any one of these 10 chapters surprised you, the 80-person expedition, the illegal hole, the spring that ran dry, leave it in the comments. My own is number 2. The expedition that waited all morning. If you want more of this kind of research, subscribe. There are places like this everywhere. We are just getting started.